Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
That music was well timed to start exactly on 11 o'clock. As you know, Henry was a very specific man. So he liked to get things just right. So today we gather to celebrate Henry's life. It's a celebration. I hope when you walk into this room or when you look into this room, you're not you're not coming to a funeral. What you're coming to is an ascension ceremony. And to ascend is to lift up high. To lift up high. So all of us gathered here today, on the 9th of June, we come to lift Henry up high and to send him off in glory. Henry was a wonderful man. I know Henry for 40 years. You might wonder how you can know him for 40 years when you look so young. Well, that's the way it is. Henry, you see the title of this is called Seonghwa ceremony. And it's a Seonghwa ceremony, it's a Korean word. But to translate it, it means ascension and harmony. And this moment is a moment when death is not, death is not just you die and that's it. It's a moment when you ascend into the eternal spiritual world. It's a time of joy. It says when somebody ascends, it should be even more special than even a bride and groom on the wedding day. Because death itself is a process. It's a life, you live the life, you go through the journey of life, and you accumulate the fruits of life, the fruits of love, joy, peace, happiness, or kindness. You develop all of these things. And then when you take your final breath, is a time to send off the deceased with joy and happiness. Not one of tears and sadness, but with joy and happiness. So that is really the real meaning of Seonghwa. So we'd like to begin let us stand and sing. By the way, I welcome all of you here together with Avril's family. I want to welcome you all to here, and it's a great honor. I want to say that we would have get hundreds of people. Many people would love to be here, but they cannot be here. So we will video the whole thing, and then we'll show it on Zoom tomorrow for all the different people around the world, America, Japan, and lots of people all around the UK. And then they can be part of the ceremony together with the Master's family. Let's invite the musician up, and we begin with our first song, Song of the Garden. Let us stand if you can. If you cannot, please remain seated.
The Lord into his garden comes, the spices here, the rich perfume. The lilies grow and thrive, the lilies grow and thrive, refreshing showers of grace divine, from the Father flow to every vine, and make the dead revive, and make the dead revive. Oh, that this dry and barren ground in springs of water may abound, a fruitful soil become, a fruitful soil become. The desert blossoms as a rose, when the Savior conquers all his foes.
next song is a song which Henry and Eva sing every day. They sing this song every day.
You see the words?
Yep.
Love will bloom when new tidings of hope. May the world live in new freedom. Earth and heaven rejoice as the rain of peace brings hope, prosperity and love. Help me on eternity in the journey of God, in the land of God. The lily in heaven's light, vibrant colors abound. In the goodness of the Spirit, good love lights our way, ever prospering God's love. Rejoice forevermore, shining for eternity in the journey of God, in the land of God. The day of building light, manifest the ideal as the grain flies over the mountain. God's command is revealed in the word of heaven and earth. Rejoice in morning's come, shining for eternity in the journey of God, in the land of God. Prepare new love to all, earth and heaven resound. For the hope of all the ages is the kingdom of God. As the flag of Charnel goes, wait firmly for all time, shining for eternity in the journey of God, in the land of God.
Join us in prayer. Good morning, our most beloved Heavenly Parents. We gathered here today, the 9th of June, 2020, to celebrate the life of your beloved son, Henry Master. Henry, Father, live his life with hope, and live his life with trust and confidence in you. Henry, he live his life believing that this world will be a better place, that humankind will change, and that the kingdom of heaven will come. The kingdom of heaven must come. The kingdom of heaven that Jesus says and teaches disciples, that kingdom come on earth as it shall be in heaven. Here is the place where we build that kingdom. Here is the place where we shape our spirit. Here is the place where we grow our love and develop our hearts. Here is the place where we give birth to our children. Here is the place where we make friends and make relationship, lasting relationship. And Father, when the time comes, and then we have to depart and return back to you. Father, we pray all that we have done during that lifetime, and for Henry it's been 93 years, it's been one of making wonderful memories. And memories, Father, that his family will never forget, and all those who know him will never forget. Father, we truly blessed and honored to be here today to celebrate his life, a life well lived, a life, Father, that is had when his eyes meet your eyes, he could see all of the future. He can see all the things that his ancestors has worked for. And he see that nothing belonged to us, that it belonged all to you. Henry, we come to celebrate your life together with your beloved wife Averill and your 3 beautiful children and your 6 grandchildren that cannot be here today, and not all of them can be here today, and your 2 great-grandchildren and all your friends. We want to thank God for your life. We want to thank God for guiding you so diligently throughout your physical journey, and really want to celebrate your life as we send you off into the eternal spiritual world with joy. Please be with us and join in this celebration. We offer this prayer in all of our names gathered here. My name, Franklin and Cecilia Fortune, blessed and joy family. Adieu. Amen. Please be seated. So, I think about Henry's life, and I ask him the question. It says, how would you want people to remember you? How would you like to be remembered? Sometimes we wonder in it, what would people think about me when I'm gone? Would they think if I was an artist, oh, he's a fantastic artist, or he was a great musician? But yesterday I sit down and I listened to Henry's film, Eye of a Needle, The Eye of a Needle. I listened to it once, and I sit there with tears in my eyes, and I listen to it again as he is expressing the things that is most important to him, the things that he treasured the most, and the things that he had from the very beginning of his life. And that is what? The key that he emphasized, the central element of a life is love. And that is all that he wants to be remembered as, a loving, caring man that did his 100% good for the sake of God and for others. Isn't that a wonderful way to remember somebody that lived his life to the fullest? So I'm sure today we would learn many things about Henry. First of all, we want to invite his wonderful daughter Celia to share Henry's eulogy.
My father, Henry Arthur Corbett Masters, was born in Rawton near Swindon on July the 16th, 1926, as the second child to his parents, William Arthur and Rosalie Masters. He had an older and a younger sister, Ellen and Rosalie. When he was about 2 years old, his father suddenly died of thrombosis, but he was too young to remember him. His mother was left with 3 young children and an invalid mother. Their finances being greatly reduced, they had to move to a little house in Dorset in the countryside. In the school holidays, they had a lot of fun growing up with their mother, who had a great spirit of adventure. She would take them camping, climbing, and exploring caves, among other exciting things. Going off on a bicycle, carrying their tents and pots and pans in a trailer behind them. Henry went to a weekly boarding school at the age of 6, as he was considered such a handful for his mother. She used to take him on the back of her bicycle and bring him back at the end of the week. His early days at prep school were very unhappy, until he went to King's School, Bruton, where things changed for him. One day in the school library, he discovered a large red-bound book on the excavation of the Minoan palace at Knossos in Crete. He was totally fascinated by it and reconstructed a simple cardboard model of it from cornflakes packets. When Henry went for his interview at the Architectural Association, he had no paintings or drawings to show. He simply took suitcases of cardboard models he had made. The principal was so impressed with his model of the Palace of Knossos that he gave him a place in the school on the strength of it. He was so excited he ran across Bedford Square to where his mother was waiting and hugged her in a victorious embrace. His future was sealed. He went to the AA for 1 year until he was 18, when he was called up to join the army. Being an architect student, he was enlisted into the Royal Engineers to learn how to build bridges and roads, etc. He was sent on a troop ship to India. The war had just ended, much to his mother's relief. While in the army, he had many experiences with the local people. When he had time off, he would hire a bicycle and go off to visit temples of different religions. On one occasion, he met an ancient goat herd on a little hillock, and they shared some time together. Although they couldn't communicate in words, Henry gave him his army rations, and the shepherd gave him some delicious apples. He felt a strong sense of brotherhood with the people in India, and sometimes wondered if he had some Indian blood in his veins. He was never conscious of differences in colour and race, and was always interested in people. Henry went on to Burma and West Africa, where he joined the West African Frontier Force. When he was demobilized from the army, he returned home to continue his architectural studies and also to take care of the estate he had inherited, which had become very dilapidated. Henry had inherited the estate from his Uncle John, and he had to sell off some of the properties to cover the death duties. One day, his Aunt Mary took Henry and his sisters on a picnic at a quiet spot near the railway line, which he realized later was the site of a Roman villa. It was then that she told him that this land would one day be his. He inherited the family estate of Stanton Fitzwarren in 1949 from his uncle John Masters, who had no male heir. The property was entailed for 400 years, and Henry was the last of the entail. With his inheritance, he also became patron of the living, and he became involved in the activities of the church. He was the vicar's warden and also assisted the rector as lay reader. When Henry completed his studies, he followed his father's footsteps and opened an architectural practice in Swindon, with clients from a wide spectrum, but most important were the churches and buildings in the Bristol diocese and improvements to the properties of a local brewery. On one occasion, shaking hands with Princess Margaret when she opened a youth hostel that he had been working on. Henry and Abel became engaged after Henry's proposal on bended knee in a railway carriage. After arriving at Victoria Station, they went directly to the nearest church to offer thanks to God for their engagement. It was Westminster Cathedral. On August the 23rd, 1952, Henry and Abel were married in the village church, where they had both been baptized 26 years before. The wedding reception was in the old tithe barn at North Farm. They had known each other since the age of 2, when, as we have been told, he chased after her, trying to kiss her. But his sister Ellen said, more likely to pull her hair. Henry and Abel chose a site in the village to build their dream home, Hossel Lane. It had a wonderful view across the valley to the wood beyond that Henry loved to walk through sometimes with his children on his shoulders when their little legs became tired, sometimes bringing home a bunch of wild flowers. Henry's trip to Sweden during his student years influenced his ideas on the design of the home he wanted to build, an open-plan house. Henry and Abel had 3 children, Rosalind, Priscilla, and James, the last 2 being born at home with the help of the local midwife and the doctor who lived next door. It was Christmas 1972 when Henry first had the opportunity to read the Divine Principle, the teaching of the Reverend Sam Young Moon. Over the next few days, Henry and Abel continued to read together and were deeply touched by what they read, which concerned the things they felt most deeply about in their life of faith, and felt that it was what they had been searching for. Henry felt that if this was the time of the second coming, how should they react? He felt an overwhelming impulse from the spirit world to offer to God everything that they had in absolute submission. a total offering of all that they loved most dearly. They were convinced that their family would be totally with them. James' remaining school fees in King's Bruton, where he was happy, were paid in advance to complete his education, also with the understanding that he would continue to be at the farm, which he loved, and be cared for during the school holidays. In 1973, they joined the Unification Church as a family, and in April of that year, they were invited to America to the special Holy Day, the Day of All Things, to meet Father and Mother Moon in their home. Henry presented a small scroll on which he had drawn a map of the estate. At precisely 6 p.m. on the 6th day of the 6th month, 1975, 400 years after the property of Stanton Fitzwarren had come into the possession of our ancestors, he signed the papers to the property of the Sun Myung Moon Foundation. My father, being the last of the entail, was free to do so. In 1974, Reverend Moon came to the farm and planted the first tree to make a holy ground. The 6 oak trees were planted in the form of a cross to make a grove. Henry planted the 6th tree at the base of the cross. Unfortunately, due to vandalism, only 2 trees remain: the central tree, planted by Reverend Moon, and the tree at the base, planted by Henry. Henry and Abel went to America on various different occasions, and one of the most important occasions was their blessing on December the 23rd, 1976, at Belvedere. In 1978, when True Parents were in England, Reverend Moon approached Henry with a new mission. He said, "If you are an architect and can design buildings, you can also design boats." He went with Colonel Han to a bookshop and bought a book entitled Amateur Fiberglass Boat Building. He chose Brian Hill, a qualified electronics engineer, to work with him, and that was the beginning of their work in the Ocean Providence. Henry greatly appreciated Brian's talent, resourcefulness, and loyalty, and he said he was the most unassuming person that one could ever have to work with. After visiting various fiberglass boat building yards in Europe and America, they began their work designing fiberglass fishing boats in the East Sun Building in New York. They produced many drawings, and Henry did a scale model of the boat, which Reverend Moon was particularly interested in when he visited to see their progress. It meant so much more to him than detailed drawings. During this time, Reverend Moon was so concerned about the ever-increasing population and the starving people in the world, and was very keen to develop the fishing industry and fish farming to tap into the vast resources in the ocean. Henry began by designing the 28-foot boats, and on July the 10th, 1980, the first Good Go boat, the One Hope One, was completed. This was just 120 days from the time they started in the East Sun Building. Someone had put Noah as a joke on the door of his office, but Noah had taken 120 years. He continued to work with boat building within the Ocean Providence for 26 years, working in various places in America, Mississippi, Alabama, New Jersey, and North Carolina, and in Mokpo, Korea. He designed various sized boats for different types of fishing, and on some occasions also went out fishing with Reverend Moon. In 1996, at the age of 70, Henry and Abel were called to be national messiahs to Cuba. As Cuba was a communist country, they could not live there, but were able to visit on a couple of occasions by going through Jamaica. They moved to Miami to work with the Cuban people that were there, working together with a Korean, Japanese, and Italian couple. Henry and Abel returned home to their roots in 2007 at the age of 81, Henry having finally completed his last boat, the 32-foot. As they successfully launched the boat on its first test run, they were followed by a school of dolphins leaping gleefully out of the water around the boat. After arriving back in Stanton Fitzwarren, Henry began to write the story of his life in his book, The Eye of the Needle. It is wonderful that my father can be interred in this special piece of land that has meant so much to him and has so much history. And I would just like to read This is a little piece of prose that my father's written, and it's called The Skylark. And it's about Coombs, which is a field in North Farm where one could often hear the sound of a skylark. It is July, and we are walking across the top of Coombs. The skylark is singing high in the sky above our heads. I well remember a time, some 80 years ago, when I was lying in the grass on my back at the top of Coombs, listening to that song and searching for that tiny speck in the sky above. I wonder whether in times to come, when everything else in the world has changed, that song will still be heard at the top of Coombs.
I think that is a round of applause, don't you think? What a remarkable man, remarkable life, remarkable person. There is so much more that can be said about Henry. If you like to get his autobiography, you can be able to read more, or if you want to read the film, watch the film, Eye of a Needle, you can again watch that. It's very moving and very inspiring. Truly a man of incredible faith. I'd like to invite Mr. Matthew Hewish to do the reading, and that will follow by the sermon, the message from Dr. Michael Balcom.
Good morning, everyone. The first reading is from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, verses 1 to 4. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship, that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. The second reading is an excerpt from the 10th peace message of Father Moon. When we are bound together in true love, we can be together forever, continually rejoicing in each other's company. The attraction of true love brings all things in the universe to our feet. Even God will come to dwell with us. Nothing can compare to the value of true love. It has the power to dissolve the barriers fallen people have created, including national boundaries and the barriers of race and even religion. The main attributes of God's true love are that it is absolute, unique, unchanging, and eternal. So whoever practices true love will live with God, share his happiness, and enjoy the right to participate as an equal in his work. Therefore, a life lived for the sake of others, a life of true love, is the absolute precondition for entering the kingdom of heaven.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, April. Good morning, family. Good morning, outside. I want to draw your attention for a moment to the calligraphy above the altar here, and you probably can't read Korean, but it says, congratulations to the representative who contributed to the liberation of heaven's homeland. And this is a special calligraphy from Mother Moon. And to my certain knowledge, Henry is the first and only English person to have received such a commendation. So I want to convey Mother Moon's special fondness and memory of Henry. She was very fond of Henry, struggling with her R's and L's. She often called him Henley, like the regatta. And Father Moon often said, Henry is a true English gentleman. And we're here in this beautiful English countryside today to remember really a gentleman, a scholar, a friend, and a brother. Henry, congratulations on this special day. You know, Father and Mother Moon often said that there are 3 stages to the human journey, the 3 stages of life, shall we say. The first stage is those 9 months, 40 weeks that we spend in our mother's womb. And during that time, we develop our sensory organs and all the functioning parts of the body. But interestingly, we don't need them during that time in the womb. It's all preparation for the time when we're born into this world. Of course, nobody remembers, I think, what life was like in the womb. But Father Moon used to like to speculate about what a baby about to be born might think as he or she was about to leave the comfort of the only world they've known. He said, you know, the average woman's womb is no bigger than a little rice cooker. But for that baby, it's the entire universe, everything it's ever known. And then one day, that whole life comes to an end, and the baby comes out into this world in which now we all live. But this is only stage 2. And hard though it is for us to realize, our time here on earth is in many ways similar to those 40 weeks in our mother's womb, because this is not our final home. As you heard from Pastor Franklin, this is where we grow the ability to love that will serve us in our eternal homeland with God. And the day comes, of course, when we must leave this earth. One thing is sure, all of us will make that journey. So Henry is just a little bit ahead of us, and for sure, he'll be waiting when we ourselves make that journey. And we've come here from all over the world. I see people here from Korea, from Japan, across the river in Wales. I think there would indeed be many hundreds here in other circumstances. And we haven't come here to grieve, although naturally we feel a little sorrow in parting, sweet sorrow, as Shakespeare would say. But we've really come here to celebrate, because this is the beginning of something much greater. I was reading some more of the words of Father and Mother Moon this morning. They said, what happens to a person when they ascend? They said they become one with God. The scriptures say that our body is the temple of God. But sometimes it doesn't feel that way during our life here. We have to struggle sometimes with sickness, with fatigue, with many irritations, but none of that passes on. So, Henry today, for sure, is much closer to our Heavenly Parent. That's the destiny of everyone who's lived a life of love, of faithfulness. And I want to say, Henry, put in a good word for us. We would like to be, English ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to be remembered with the same kind of fondness that we remember you today. My dear brothers and sisters, life is short. Life is short. We may have 70, 100 years here on this earth. When it's over, it will feel just like those 40 weeks in the mother's womb. We all have work to do. That's why we're still here. We have work to do in learning to love, learning to care, learning to give. And if we want to remember Henry in the best way, then from today, let's make a new commitment to live that kind of life. Thank you very much.
Well said, beautifully expressed. I want to just acknowledge the beautiful flowers and all the beautiful things around him. Anyone walking from outside would not realize what's going on here today. But we wanted to see Henry as the king, ascending through a new spiritual throne and waiting for his queen to come one day. But she is still here with us today, and we really appreciate her very much. I'd like to invite the musician, and we sing one of the favorite songs, Amazing Grace. Let us start.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost,
In this section, we have when people don't know Henry, or I want to share something about him. So the first person going to be Pastor Ronnie German. I'm going to share a testimony about Henry, followed by Henry's godson, Peter Lilik. He's going to sing a song from Robin Schumann. I'm sure I pronounced it wrong. And then follow about a message from Henry's grandson in Italy. So, and then we'll continue from there.
Good morning. I'd like to tell you some things that Henry did, but that wouldn't be fair because you can read all that and more in his autobiography and, of course, in the video, The Eye of the Needle. But I'd like to say a little bit about Henry, the man. That is the man that I knew. Jesus said it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. But he didn't say it was impossible. And when I think of Henry, I realize just that it wasn't impossible. Shortly after World War II, the world had a great opportunity to welcome the returning Lord. Many people were prepared, and certainly the generation, those of Henry and Averil's age, were ready. Christianity was prepared, but sadly didn't quite understand the importance of the time. And instead of holding up those lamps, those proverbial lamps full of oil that the Bible tells us about from the 10 virgins, ready to receive the flame of the new truth, it became like the virgins whose lamps were empty and lifeless. But despite the darkness and the failures, there were occasions when certain lamps were full and ready to be lit. Henry was such a one, and with a spirit of humility was able to respond to the call when it came. Henry was one of those, a beacon waiting to be lit when the spirit of the new truth touched him. Whether or not he hesitated, I don't know. But what is important is that the many generations of his family that preceded him and who had established such a wonderful foundation for him to stand on were certainly not disappointed. Henry responded to the call, devoting his life, his family, and his fortune to serve the love he must have been hoping to meet. In the following years, Henry had many opportunities to serve true father and true mother, and he did so with the spirit of a true gentleman, such that I believe when I read father's words, where father is moved to call the British true gentleman and the culture a splendid culture, in Henry he saw the best, and I really do mean the best of both. It's when we look back on people's lives that we come to see just how much they gave to the world. Henry and Averil received God's wonderful blessing and together went on to establish a great foundation that their family and indeed future generations of their descendants will, without a doubt, be able to look back on with great pride and with gratitude. I'm a Welshman, as Dr. Barkham was referring to, over the river. If I was ever to be an Englishman, I would be proud if I could be half the gentleman that Henry was. Henry, may you always be at peace, and may you always be able to look down on your descendants to see them continue in what heaven calls a splendid culture. God bless you, Henry, and may God always be with you. Thank you.
I feel privileged and immensely thankful to have had Henry as my godfather. He was a true gentleman and a gentle man, sensitive and wise. Henry was kind-hearted and generous. but he was modest about his many accomplishments in life. He loved his family, and he was steadfast in his faith, both in the church and in his lifelong companion, Avril. Henry and Avril have always been a part of my life too, and I find it impossible to consider them apart. So this piece that I'm about to sing is dedicated to Henry and to Avril. It's a song by Robert Schumann entitled Widmung, which translates as dedication. Du meine Seele, du mein Herz, du meine Wonne, oh, du mein Schmerz, du meine Welt, in der ich lebe, mein Himmel, du, darein ich schwebe, oh, du mein Grab, in das hinab ich ewig meine Kummer gab. Du bist die Ruhe, du bist der Frieden, du bist vom Himmel mir beschieden, dass du mich liebst, magst mich mit Welt, dein Blick hat mich vor mir verquält. Du hebst mich liebend über mich, mein guter Geist, mein besseres Ich. Du meine Seele, du mein Herz, du meine Wonne, oh, du mein Schmerz. Du meine Welt, in der ich lebe, mein Himmel, du, darein ich schwebe, mein guter Geist, mein besseres Ich.
Good day, everyone. Before I read the message from Henry Migliore, grandson, I would like to share a few words. It's really a privilege to be here today. I had an interesting experience where I had this deep desire that I wanted to be in attendance here because I felt it's such a significant occasion for us as blessed family members from this country. So I had this very sincere moment and prayer that I wish I could be here, even though the circumstances wouldn't generally allow it. And then I received the message to read this. I felt it was a precious experience to feel that, God is present in these small moments. And I remember meeting Henry Jr. For the first time, 2007, and soon after that, meeting the Masters for the first time, being prepared to meet them by my parents, because the Masters are legendary figures in our movement, and really being prepared for that occasion. And that was one of those few occasions to be in the presence of a couple who really transmit such a love, such a profound peace. So it was a genuinely holy moment to be there as a 19, 20-year-old, meeting them, just being introduced to them and feeling like that's the genuine accomplishment and product of such an amazing life. So there were just those tiny moments where I actually experienced the Masters, just being introduced and being able to experience something of them. But I'm grateful that I can read this message from Henry Jr. Dear Grandpa, we first met in August 1990. At that time, I was only a little baby boy, and as I am told, quite noisy and fidgety. I wonder what you must have thought at first about your little grandson while holding me safe in your hands. Back then, in those days in Alabama, I was very lucky to spend about 3 years with you and Granny. As a result of that, I today have so many interests in common with you both, such as the interest in reading and history and so on. I do not have any clear memory of those years, although when I think about the life I might have been living with you, and about any events that might have occurred during those times, I can always fill my soul with a sweet feeling of safeness. However, time passes and things changed a lot over the years. I eventually moved to Italy, and we were then meeting only once a year during the summer holidays. I would always look forward to those bright weeks with you. I could never wait to get to England to see you and Granny. So much to do, so many things to talk about, and so many stories to listen to. There was always a place to go, things to see, and of course, our English relatives to visit. During those English summer holiday nights, I would often stop for a moment and contemplate about where I was and think about you. I would often think about your life, about your immense love and unshakable faith in true parents. Your life has been amazing and rich. You visited many countries and had so many accomplishments. I have always looked up to you so much for the person you are. The last time we met was just after I got married. Unfortunately, due to the various circumstances, you could not attend my wedding. But this did not stop my wife and I from bringing our marriage to you. And during our honeymoon, we stopped by and visited you. It was so good to see you and to share with you and Granny all the pictures and videos we had prepared for you both. The last image I have of you is seeing you there, sitting comfortably in your living room armchair, at ease and relaxed. Although on that very occasion I was much older compared to when you used to lift me up and play with me in the garden of our old house in South Garden, Alabama, looking at you, I could still feel in my bones that profound feeling of safeness that only you are capable of filling me with, just as in the old times. Thank you so much, Grandpa. Thank you so much for the man you were. Thank you for all the things you taught me. You have always meant so much to me. Lots of love, your grandson, Henry Migliore. Thank you.
I could invite also Mr. David Hanna, and then follow on Mrs. Roswitha Clarkson. She will read some messages from America.
April, Master's family, and everybody, good morning. You know, I was genuinely surprised. 10 years ago, Henry wrote to me asking if I could write a foreword to the autobiography that he had been working on. You know, I thought there must be people that he had worked with more closely and knew better than myself, whom he could have asked, but I felt to respect his wish. Of course, before I could write a foreword, I had to read the book. So that was an amazing experience. It was just such a precious experience. And I was very moved to find that I could relate to so many of the things he talked about from my own upbringing, and found many striking similarities between his life and the life of my own father, who died June the 9th of that year, 10 years ago. My father was also an architect and broke off his studies to join the Royal Engineers and spent time in India and Burma, as Henry did. I'd like to just read the final section of that introduction that I wrote then. And I wondered as I read this through to myself if I had, in a way, been writing for this moment. Every time I think of Henry and Averill, and especially when I set eyes on Henry with his gentle, constant air of calm, I wonder how they could survive life in the unification movement. It can only be because of their exceptional personal qualities and their very real faith. There is much in this autobiography that any unificationist will recognize, although few will have been involved with such pioneering design and engineering tasks as Henry. And there is much that one can read between the lines. The Unification Church life and culture, through its pioneering years, has developed its own peculiar ways of doing things, some justified, others perhaps a little idiosyncratic, the same way that a family survives its eccentric relatives, by faith, hope, and love for the most part. By no means can everyone survive this, however, and it has been a particularly difficult course, it has to be said, for many of those married couples who met the movement. Surrounded by young single members who might have lacked empathy, and superiors who often, I'm sure, were mistakenly drawn to act in a superior way, Henry and Abel must have endured so much. If you listen carefully as you read, those blanks between the words and lines will speak to you. I wish I could, by offering my sincere apologies and deepest respect, wipe out the pain of any and every mistreatment they may have suffered, however small. The Eye of a Needle, this autobiography, will be an eye-opener to those observers who are intrigued to know more about the founder, Reverend Moon, and at least one great concern of his, how to harness the potential of the world's oceans. This is an important document. The first section about Henry's family and early life is a fascinating piece of social history, peppered with beautiful observances that allow one to grasp something notoriously elusive: Englishness. It will be important, certainly, to the Master's family in present and future generations. It's also important for the unificationist community worldwide, for those of us who, like Henry and Averill, look to Reverend and Mrs. Moon as fulfilling a messianic role as true parents. It's a wonderful lesson in why we are here and why we should remain grateful to the end. Even for the general reader, it stands as an extraordinary testament to living a life of faith, what it means to live a life of sacrifice, devotion, and of putting God first. Henry ends by noting some profound patterns that reveal the hand of God at work, the closing of circles both in his own life and in the particular providence of God of which he has been a part. It is as if, in the last stages of his long and productive life, a great wisdom has settled upon him, that by having kept a steady line through all the trees, he can finally see the wood in all its majestic glory. And in sight of the wood, a place to rest, a coming home. Thank you, Henry. God bless you.
This is one of many tributes, really, that have been flooding in since day one via WhatsApp, etc. So I've been handed this here. Mr. Masters, Seonghwa. Hello, Mrs. Masters. I wanted to extend my condolences on Mr. Masters' passing. I'm always grateful for the years that I was able to work with him in the fiberglass boat building Providence. I would love to add my voice to the many that are no doubt rejoicing in his life and wishing him well on his journey home. My best memory of Mr. Masters are his good humor and humble spirit. I recall very fondly that for his birthday in 1980, we at Master Marine had a small celebration complete with a cake. The candles on the cake were trick candles that were very hard to blow out. After singing happy birthday, Mr. Masters proceeded to blow out the candles, which of course promptly relit. He continued to try to blow them out until finally he was crouched down at eye level with the cake, grasping the table with both hands and blowing the candles out with all his might, which of course promptly relit. I think that at that point the gig was up. But Mr. Masters rose to his feet with a great smile. The image of him and that birthday cake are indelibly etched in my heart. Please accept our love and warm wishes from Nova Scotia. Warmest regards, Joy King and family, sent from my iPhone. The second one. Dearest Avril, this is for you and whomever you would like to share it with. As I have been thinking about what to say here and put down, I have been calmed greatly by Henry's spirit and presence. As we all say, see you in a while, Henry. We invariably recount in our hearts and minds the many moments together over the years, from Alabama and Mississippi to New Jersey and finally North Carolina. Mr. Masters was there working so hard to create the boats that true father dreamt of and yearned to see on the water. I believe that true father very much appreciated Henry's efforts each time he went out on one of the boats, whether it was on the original Good Goes or eventually the 34th here in North Carolina. I believe he thoroughly enjoyed the experiences and was able to connect more deeply with Heavenly Father each time he went to the sea. Henry's quiet and calm spirit, along with his easy smile, will be missed here on his plane. And we celebrate his steady and strong nature, not unlike the diesel engines that propelled many of the later models of the true world marine vessels through the choppy seas. Thank you, Henry, for a job well done. You are a man of honor, dignity, and grace. I'm very happy to have met you, worked with you, and learned from you, and so much look forward to seeing you again in the not so distant future. Until then, elder brother, let your spirit rise to the greatest heights, as you are greeted there by so many that love and care about you. Be with God. Your younger brother, Keenan Saman, Master Marine, Hobby World, and True World Marine, North Carolina. Thank you very much.
I want to use this opportunity to express my gratitude to Henry Masters. I got to know Henry first in 1973 when, as a young member in the UK, I used to visit their Hostel Lane home and we studied principle together. I was first impressed by the gentlemanly nature of Henry. I always felt if ever there is an example of a British gentleman, Henry was the best example. And despite the kind, gentlemanly nature, there was great strength in Henry and his family. After all, he had the courage and the resolve to offer up a 400-year inheritance for the sake of God's providence. And that took strength, that took character. And they had to also go through many difficulties and some persecution as a result. But their faith was unchanged, and they followed true parents all the way. So as Henry now moves on to his eternal home, all of our love from Renee, my wife, and Nikolai, our son, and all of those who have known him, we really send our love to him on his journey home. We know that he will surely be residing in one of the great mansions that Jesus referred to in his Father's kingdom. Because what he has offered, not just his material possessions, but he offered his heart, he offered his life,
and his sincerity for so many years, following true parents without complaint, without any kind of feeling of loss. This is truly the unconditional love that true parents have always been teaching us about. And I just want to say to Averill, to Rosalind, to James, Priscilla, and their grandchildren, you have a great father, you have a great grandfather, and the United Kingdom and our world movement will remember this man as a historic figure, and this family will be honored because of the foundation that you made for God's will in the United Kingdom. God bless you, Henry, on your journey. Averill, we are supporting you, loving you, praying for you and your family, and we know that there's a great day in heaven when Henry arrived there. All of his relatives surely welcomed him with the warmest possible welcome. So God bless your family at this time. I'm only sorry that I cannot be there with my family. I know that I also speak for my brother Tom, who worked on that farm for several years and loved Henry so profoundly. Thank you, everybody who is attending this program. God bless you.
Thank you very much for all the different sharing. Of course, you could continue all day actually talking about one man, noble, righteous, special man. And I think you would find it difficult to say something bad. Isn't this a life well led? If someone was to think about my life, I'm telling you, they would find many things to say. And thank God, probably I would not be sitting in there. I would be lying somewhere. But Henry has been real exemplary for all of us, and we're truly grateful. In this part of this ceremony, we have where we ask, because of social distancing, not only those in this room can offer a flower and just rest it on Henry's coffin. And after those, all of us can do the same as outside when Henry is entombment. So I'd like to first of all call on Eva. We have some flower, which we can, or maybe just enough for the family. We can practice social distancing, but in heart, let us be close. Let us be real close. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to say that these three beautiful flowers right in the middle, that represent the three children. He really wanted to put it exactly there, right there. And the family has been central in their life. And this come to the end of this part of the ceremony. Usually the ceremony there's three parts actually when we sing farewell. Usually even when you're getting dressed, preparing the body to say farewell, it should be done in a very holy, and we see it as in a very holy way. It's the last opportunity to do some act of kindness for the departed person. And the second part of the ceremony is when, with the open coffin, where the family can say the farewell and express the heart of love and to say thank you for the life and all the example that you've shown us. But because of the COVID-19, it couldn't be done for everyone. And this third part is this section which we do now, which is called the Seonghwa ceremony. And the fourth and final part is called returning home. That's the internment. So thank you all. We will meet down by the grave. But before we close this, I'd like to ask Dr. Balcom to say a prayer to close this section.
Let's join in a moment of prayer together. Our most loving Heavenly Parent, we thank you again for the life of Henry, your true and loving son. And we appreciate all the families who've come here today to celebrate together. We are saying goodbye to Henry, but in a way we're saying see you later. And now we ask you to take him into your arms and to welcome him to his eternal home. We know that he'll probably be busy just in heaven as he was on earth. So, our loving Heavenly Parent, we offer ourselves to you. We offer this solemn moment with rejoicing and gratitude for your mercy, for your salvation, and for your grace. And we offer this prayer in all of our names. Adieu and amen.
side about the trees that Henry planted. If you look over here to the left, that is the very tree that Reverend Moon planted and that's Henry planted. There was a circle of 6 trees, but only these 2 trees remain. I once asked Martin Luther King, what do you want people to remember about you? How would you want to be remembered? And what kind of a legacy would you leave behind? Well, what would you do? He says, I'll go out and plant a tree. And in a way, Henry already planted his tree. And the tree has grown, it lays deep root, and because it lays deep root and he said have a strong foundation, it'll continue blooming, and generation after generation, maybe 100 years from now, 200 years from now, because of the foundation, the root which is laid, it still would look healthy and strong. And for us, we also, you cannot see our root. When you look underneath your feet, you don't see your roots. But actually, all of us, the life which we live in, we should be laying down this root that which we get from our ancestors, and then we pass on for generation to generation. We lay in the tradition for our future descendants. And what would you like? How would you like to be remembered? What kind of a life are we living? I always like, whenever I come to this moment, I think it's so important to reflect. If I have one more day, what would I be able to change? What in my life? What am I doing now? What effort can I make for my future? Because this time is so short. This is the time, as Henry was a builder, an architect. Any good architect, you have to have a good drawing, and you have to establish a good foundation so that the building can last long. If without no good foundation, it wouldn't stand, right? It wouldn't stand. Like Jesus talked about the man who built the house on the sand. One who built his house in which one survived? The one that built on the sand, or was it the one that built on the rock? When the storm comes, the one that was on the rock survived. So let us build our house here. Let us build it and build our life with a strong and solid foundation built on love. Love, that should be our legacy. I think about Henry's life. Love is his legacy. Love is his legacy. So thank you very much. We'll lay in Henry in his final resting place. What an honor to be laid to rest in the land, and this very land. He has walked up, he and his beautiful wife, going to the woods, picking beautiful flowers. And even when he go without her, he always come back with some flowers for her. He's also an example of husband and wife, love relationship, caring for each other. So let us take a lesson. Let's take a lesson from Henry. Let's take a lesson from him that we can, and promise even to him that we will do better. We will do better from today. So let us lay Henry down, and then after we will follow by a flower tribute. So each one of us, we can lay a flower into the grave and say what you would like to say, your last farewell, but just to say thank you.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Lord, be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my
Please come forward. Please make a line. And the family to put the first handful of soil.
Yes, a trip traveling gets long, wishing for a new day to come. When the sun rises in the morning, we'll set sail and move on, sailing with our Father. You know his ship will never stray. On the horizon, we found the promised land today. Look on with joy in your eyes. The wind of truth will guide our way. Leaving behind the raging sea, on waves of love will sail away. We'll be sailing with our Father. Ship will never sway. New hope on the horizon. We found the promised land today. Darkness, it always turns to light. The promised land is inside. He's our guiding star by night, and in the day our eyes shall bright.
Pastor Ronnie German to say
Please join me in a final prayer. Our beloved Heavenly Parent, we are saying our final farewell to Henry Masters. This is really the final conclusion to his life here on earth as an individual and as a family man and as a great son of yours and a patriot of this great nation. We know that life is about learning how to love. And as we heard all wonderful messages this morning, the final point that rests with us is that we are to become the living temples, the embodiment of yourself, such that your absolute, unconditional, perfect love oozes through the minds and bodies of each one of us. Henry has done his very best to embody that spirit throughout his whole life, attending the true parents in the way that you called him to. And his life, although finished here on the earth, will undoubtedly continue with great enthusiasm and determination in the spirit world as he recovers his youthfulness and his freshness of spirit, ready to pioneer new areas of the spirit world. Perhaps there are great oceans there where he is ready to build even bigger and better boats that can serve heaven's purpose. But for all of us, we want to take this moment to thank you that for one such life, perhaps just a few fleeting years in the whole history of this earth, a lifetime seems an age for each one of us, and yet when we come close to the end of it, we realize it's just a fleeting moment. But that fleeting moment, it's so important that it's filled with the essence, and that essence is love. Thank you so much for his incredible life, his example, and his wonderful character that really embodies the goodness, the humility, and the love of heaven. As we each now gather saying our final farewell, we want to reflect in our own minds and hearts that one life's passing is an opportunity for us to reflect on our own lives and to pledge a renewed determination to do even more, to embody your love and to manifest the heart and spirit that you have been longing to share with your children throughout the whole course of human history. Beloved Heavenly Parent, we want to say farewell, to send our brother Henry on his way now with this last effort of covering the grave, of sharing our moments together and continuing on our way, just as Henry now will be ready to continue on his journey in the next life. Thank you so much. As we are concluding now, please then welcome him into your loving arms, into heaven, and may he go forward in the peace and love that you have longed to share with him throughout the ages. Beloved Heavenly Parent, we look forward to the day when we can all join you in your kingdom, but not just yet. There's a lot of work still to be done on this earth, and we want to renew and reflect that we will continue this battle to build the kingdom that you are longing to see, following in the footsteps of those who have gone before us. So please, please let your blessing come down on each one here so that we may be lifted up in spirit, and with the passing of one brother, something will lift us and remind us that our lives are short, but we can put a lot of love and a lot of spirit into these lives. Thank you, and please accept our prayers, our offerings, and our final farewell. And on behalf of everybody here, I want to report this in my name, Ron German, of a blessed central family. Adieu. Amen.
We have a unification tradition where we say 3 chairs of Ogmanse, meaning blessings for thousands of years. But before that, I want to ask Eva if she have any final words she would like to say.
say thank you to everyone for coming. It's been so lovely to have all the support of all of you, and also for all the people that have sent in so many tributes to Henry. He was a great man. He was most of all a great husband and father, and we shall miss him, of course, but we know that he's free from all the indignities that come with old age, and that he can go on, and I shall be there. He always used to say, "Where are you?" And I always just said, "I'm right behind you." I am right behind him. But thank you so much. It's a beautiful service you all contributed to, and I'm so grateful. Peter's lovely song, and I'm sorry, and that wonderful readings are so deeply moving, tributes and things. Thank you so much. That's written. David, everyone, all your love and support.
I know Henry Jr. would have loved to say the Hogman say, but I'm going to call the man who read his story expressing that's Patrick Hanna, if he can come and say the three Hogman say, because he represented the grandson, so he can represent the grandson right here.
So we'll do Hananim, Shambumonim, and Henry Masters and the Masters family of Monse. Okay.
And then usually you throw your hands up in the towards
Full,
heaven.
fully free. So let's honor with this final three cheers of Okmanse. Hananim! Okmanse! Chambumanim! Okmanse! Henry Masters and the whole Masters family! Okmanse!
Let's continue to give a big round of applause to Henry. This is for you, Henry. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. It's been a great effort. I'd like to thank Peter Kong, who did the wonderful program. We'd like to thank Ron and Bernard and Mrs. Yeah, of course, Silla as the family. Also, Mrs. De Giles and everyone who has supported the family in this time. Thank you all very much. Give yourself a big round of applause.